because I don't want to go backwards. I want to keep going forward. Together, that's exactly where we're going to go. God bless.
I'm Steve Walters.
And I'm J.R. Ross.
Welcome to a year-end special edition of Rewind. We're not going to focus on this week in the Capitol. We're going to focus on the 10 biggest political stories in Wisconsin. We're going to do it a little differently. The WisconsinEye doesn't have a house band, but we do have a house drummer. Meet Henry Cerrugi. Give us some love, Henry. Thank you. And we're going to count down the top 10. Let me just explain a moment how these top 10 were arrived at. We asked more than 12 Capitol reporters, we gave them a list of 16 political stories for the year, asked them to pick the top 10, and the very talented WisconsinEye staff also was polled. So let's start with honorable mentions. J.R. Ryan chairs the U.S. House Committee on Ways and Means. It's a top committee.
Yes.
He also writes a book, and he's mulling presidential bid. What do you think?
The going money is he won't run for president. There's too much of an opportunity for him with Ways and Means to shape everything from Social Security to tax policy. I mean, this is like the wonkiest wonk job in Congress, and this is the wonkiest wonk in Congress. So the perception is, why would he want to leave that job, run for president, where it's a meat grinder for 12 months. Remember when he ran for vice president, he was picked in August.
Yes.
It's a short campaign for him and a young family. Yep. He's only in his early 40s. He can take his time for president in 10 years if he wants to.
Good
do
point.
This first.
Honorable mention number 2. The irascible, outspoken Senator Grothman announced before Congressman Petri even knew he wasn't seeking re-election that he was going to challenge Tom Petri in the 6th District. Well, lo and behold, he wins a three-way primary. Mr. Grothman goes to Washington. Your
Reluctantly.
Reluctantly. Yeah, I saw that.
Glenn Grothman has a reputation for saying things are kind of out there. Ran a phenomenal campaign from the standpoint of message discipline. Nobody thought Glenn Grothman would hold it together the way he did that entire campaign. So give him a lot of credit for that.
That's very true.
But look at his comments to the Senate Republican caucus. When they met after he'd been elected. You guys are going to have a great time here. It took him weeks to write his resignation letter. I mean, there's a perception among some Republicans that he's having second thoughts about going to Washington. He wants to stay in the state Senate because it's what he's known. I mean, let's be honest. He's been in state government for, 20 years?
Yes, he has.
I think he's having separation anxiety a little bit.
Separation anxiety. And almost made the top 10, but didn't. The Potawatomi tribe is withholding $25 million in taxes on casino profits for the state, saying they're going to lose millions if the governor approves the Kenosha Casino proposed by the Menominee tribe. Do you think this withholding, the $25 million, is going to have any bearing on the governor's decision? It must be made by February 16th.
The bigger piece is, what's it mean overall? The governor's warned that it could be a $100 million hit to the state budget, because you start looking at these complex compacts, and I don't pretend to understand all the language in them, but you start talking about impacting the profits of not just the Potawatomi, but the Ho-Chunk and others. There's a way you could lose a lot of money. And oh, by the way, can you imagine the evangelical Christian voter in Iowa right now saying, well, wait a second, you're going to expand gaming in Wisconsin and come here to see me and ask for my vote? That's a tough sell, Mr. Walker. So there are presidential impacts for everything Walker does anymore, and this is one it has as well.
Okay. Well, those so much for the honorable mentions. You ready for the top 10?
Absolutely.
Number 10. Assembly Majority Leader Bill Kramer self-destructs. Bill Kramer, 4 terms, degree in accounting, lawyer, rose to Speaker Pro Tem, did that with job pretty well.
Ran all 4 days of the debate in the Assembly on Act 10 on his feet almost the entire time.
Thank you. But then charged with sexual assault, convicted, stripped of his leadership post, doesn't seek re-election. Any PSs on a tragedy here?
Remember when he was elected, Chris Kapinger stood up and said, this is a dangerous move. This guy has got a history. He wouldn't say what it was. We all kind of heard rumors that Kramer had a tendency to be inappropriate, if you will, but nothing like this. And this is kind of the classic downfall. It's a sad story. It's offensive what he did, but it's also a sad story of somebody who can't control his vices, if you will, and this is what happens. And there are victims all around this.
Right, and he'll have to rebuild his career.
He said, my reputation, my career is ruined. He has a CPA, as a lawyer, and a lawmaker.
Yes, yes. Okay, ready? Number 9. The budget deficit returns, JR. Pick a number. You know, the recent one, $2.2 billion in balance between spending commitments and tax collections in the 2015-2017. Last week, a report, they're, what, $874 million short.
That's
the budget
a cost
deficit
to continue budget, essentially?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the 2.2 is not a real number. I mean, we all know that. This is the wish list of state agencies saying, I want, like DPI wants $600 million for schools. They're not going to get $600 million in schools. So Walker, though, has a $1 billion problem. That is real. I mean, don't forget, there's like $132 million in this biennium they're short that LFB is saying we assume they're going to fix that this biennium. Now, how? They can manage costs somehow, try and bring things in. But Walker's going to look for a property tax cut in this next budget, reform state government, how, we're not quite sure yet.
Doesn't say big bucks. Go ahead.
And try to improve schools. How you do that with like a hole like that, an MA is a problem. I mean, there are some real issues here. It's going to be a tough budget for these guys. And by the way, the $3.6 billion
We've seen this movie.
Turned into 2.2. But so I mean, it kind of undercuts Walker's argument a little bit of I've really straightened out the books in Wisconsin when he goes off the presidential campaign.
The budget deficit is back. Number 8. Pretty amazing ask by Transportation Secretary Mark Gottlieb for $751 million in tax and fee hikes. 5-cent upper on gas tax, 10-cent on diesel. You own an electric or a hybrid, we want you to pay more to register your vehicles. And, oh yeah, a sales tax surtax. We've talked about this, and we want, what, 570 diverted from the general fund?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with this as number 8. It's a huge ask.
It's the lead LEAD Zeppelin of trial balloons, if you will. I mean, I've been amazed at how well lawmakers, Republicans, have kind of held their powder dry on this issue, not come out and ripped it to shreds, because you think about it, there's a very conservative caucus in the Assembly especially that just ran on, we're not going to raise your taxes, we're going to cut government, we're going to cut spending, and now you're asking for tax and fee hikes like this. It's kind of a tough sell. I mean, for Walker even, again, going back to running for president, how do you go out there and say, yeah, I raised the gas tax, but I'm a fiscal conservative? It's a very difficult position for him to be in. There is a window for him to try and sell this. What he has to probably do, if he wants to do it, and that's a big if, is cut your property taxes enough to say, well, I offset your increase in gas taxes. Now, for the average voter, that argument doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Wait, you cut this but raise this, and they're saying my taxes didn't go up? Well, yeah, they did, you know. And people argue the gas tax, it's a better increase than your registration fee because not just Wisconsinites pay the gas tax. You travel through Wisconsin. All those flatlanders going up north in the summertime,
30.9 cents a gallon, not raised since 2006.
Versus you and I paying registration every year. I mean, you can make all these arguments of why it would make sense. But again, the politics are difficult. There is an avenue for him to do it, but it's going to be a tough sell in some ways.
But as we mentioned, I think in the last rewind, it's been endorsed by the Wisconsin counties, Wisconsin towns, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. On this one, let's take a minute and listen to Secretary Gottlieb talking about why he recommended such a bold package. So let's listen to some audio.
We need to do something with regard to how we're financing transportation in our state. So this is one package that we've put forward. It's certainly not the only possible way this could be done. You know, the governor will consider it. He will make his recommendation to the legislature early in 2015, and then they will have a debate about the budget. If we continue on our current path with the revenues that we have, we will not be able to meet our needs. We will not provide the system that businesses and citizens of our state want to have, and so it's an issue that we need to tackle.
Number 7. Mary Burke. First major party female to run a credible candidate. Credible campaign for governor. Got 47% of the vote. I think she deserves number 7, even though she stumbled over plagiarism and spent the last few days having to talk about her circumstances why she left Trek in 1993.
She had momentum going into the plagiarism allegations. That really set her back. She never really recovered, and if she had any hopes of kind of recapturing it, the last few days of Trek allegations really kind of stopped it, if you will. I do get the impression, though, that even if she hadn't had those stumbles, the environment was so poor for Democrats this fall that it may have been a 2-point loss rather than 5 or 5, whatever it was. But I don't think in the environment we were looking at for November that she really had a good shot to win, even take those things away. Not to say she didn't run a good campaign, was good on issues, but look at the environment that we faced. People are like, Senator Warren in Virginia was ahead by big time in September, October. Nobody put money there. He almost lost. I mean, that's the environment we're looking at. When governors in Democratic, like deep blue states are losing this fall, that tells you that Barry Burke had a very difficult hill to climb in Wisconsin in November.
But she also spent $5 million of her own money, and she was a fresh face in the Democratic Party. Just a quick follow-up. Were you surprised that she then said, I'm not going to run for statewide again?
No. I mean, she's going to run for election to the school board. I think she wants to stay involved, but it's kind of tough to see, what do you do after this? The campaign would be the same issues. Well, why'd you leave Trek? Why'd you plagiarize it? It's difficult when you have that kind of a campaign to kind of run a different narrative, if you will, 4 years later.
She left Trek 21 years ago. It's just fascinating. Now let's listen to an audio clip. Mary Burke on November 4, her concession speech.
Tonight, Wisconsin re-elected Governor Walker. And for many of us, it feels a bit like getting knocked down. But if I learned anything over the last 13 months, it is this. This state we all love so much is full of people and communities that can take a hit, but that never waver in getting right back up. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dust ourselves off, and we're going to get right back up, because the values we hold dear and the Wisconsin we stand up for, they are as important and we're standing up for tonight and tomorrow as they were yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that.
Number 6. Campaign finance rules erased. It's so complicated, I have to check my notes. Before this year, $10,000 limit on what anybody could give.
Per year to everybody. Candidates and parties.
Gone. Erased. Ban on corporate campaign donations seems to be erased, at least in limbo, right?
In limbo.
Okay. Then a ban on collusion between candidates and independent groups. How would you rate that? Also gone or in limbo?
In limbo. Don't forget also the total PAC contribution limit, so the aggregate limit of PAC contributions.
Thank you.
That's gone as well.
Yep.
Open up a huge avenue for political parties to transfer big-time money that they got to individuals. If you look at the waning days of the race for governor, the state GOP transferred like $450,000, an in-kind contribution of $450,000 to Scott Walker the same day. It got $650,000 from Sheldon Adelson.
Yep.
Democratic Party Wisconsin, I think, was $250-ish. It transferred from their coffers over to Burke or gave an in-kind contribution. I mean, it really changed the dynamic. Now, some will argue for the better, because instead of that money going to the shadowy third-party groups, it's going to parties where it is disclosed. You see who gave the money, you see where it went, as opposed to citizens who love Wisconsin, etc.
Yes.
Where it's a dark hole.
Right.
So that's the new environment we live in right now.
Well, but isn't it the task of the GOP, the governor, I think the ledge will take the lead on this, to write the new rules?
Yes.
So they're not only going to blow up the GAB, which we don't have on our list, but they're going to write the new campaign finance rules for 2016, right?
Talked to Speaker Voss about this last week. He had a couple of goals, if you will. One was to strengthen political parties. The other one is give you more control of your message in a campaign. Now, two things will do that for you. Raising limits on individual contributions to candidates gives you more money, more to spend. And two, keeping the way we have it right now, where there are no limits on contributions to parties, and they can kind of transfer money over. Speaker Voss liked the new system that we had with political parties this fall. Democracy did not fall, he said, with what was going on. Corporate contributions, he wants those to political parties. He says, hey, unions can give to political parties. Why shouldn't corporations be able to do the same thing? He didn't think that corporate contributions to individuals would happen under his rewrite, if you will. But it's going to be a new day, if you will, for what's going on with what he wants to do.
If the GOP writes the rules, is this a rerun of the reapportionment and them drawing lines that favor themselves?
Voss indicates open to work with Democrats, and give them credit, they passed a bill this past year that includes some Democratic priorities like registering online. So will they work with the Republicans and vice versa? Now, if Dems say we want this, and Republicans say that's not a non-starter, they're not going to get anywhere. But if they really try to work with them, they might get some of their things in there.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, John Doe Documents. People like us got eye-strained reading thousands of John Doe documents.
Thousands.
And thousands upon thousands. The first John Doe, of course, the Milwaukee County DA Chisholm, that resulted in the convictions of 6 aides to when he was then county
Aides
executive.
or associates or donors, yeah.
Yes, okay. Then John Doe 2, Chisholm plus other local DAs. Some of the pretty stunning disclosures. The governor's campaign to survive the recall coordinated with third-party groups. 700,000 donation by Gogebic Taconite to help Republicans like Walker and the senator survive the recalls. Months before the new mining bill passed, a prosecutor said we're looking into whether the governor was, quote, the prosecutor's term, part of a criminal scheme. Pretty amazing. And then just last Friday, am I right, the GAB staff got out ahead of the GAB board and joining in the John Doe? Do I have that right?
That's the allegation in the suit. Now, the suit's one side of the story. The GAB's attorney over the weekend said, hold off on all this stuff. There's more to come once we answer this lawsuit. And oh, by the way, the GAB was going, or Doe investigators were going to subpoena Charlie Sykes and Sean
Hannity. Thought about that?
What is going on? You know, that's a little eye-popping.
The term off the rails comes to mind.
One of them, yeah. But what's interesting about this was, one, it played a huge role in not only the governor's race, but also in Walker's national ambitions. Once this stuff hit, you saw the Washington Post and others doing charts of where all the money was going, because this is part of Walker's introduction, if you will, to the national audience.
Yes.
Wait a second, what's going on here?
That's a very good point.
Now, we've been reading this stuff for several years now, but for the national media, it's the first time that they are looking into it. I can guarantee you that if and when Governor Walker runs for president, it'll come back up again. But this is all playing into that, plus the state race, plus we're finding out how things really run in Wisconsin, if you will. Now, if you are somebody nationally, you're going, oh, wait a second, he raised money for a third party. Well, super PACs nationally, President Obama doing fundraising. What's the difference? So for them, it's a bit different. For us, we're used to a different set of laws, if you will, in Wisconsin. We have more restrictive regulations on these folks. So for our voters, it was kind of an eye-opener. Wow, they're doing this stuff?
It was.
But nationally, it's like, big deal. You know, that's how the world works nationally.
But it also sets the table for the Republicans to rework our John Doe laws, as we discussed, I think, in the last rewind.
It's going to go John Doe, GAB. I mean, they're looking at all kinds of things, really, these laws are going to be changed, in part because of experience and what happened here.
Right. Okay. Top story number 4. Show your photo ID to vote.
Yes.
Well, yes. No. Yes. Finally, the Supreme Court says no. This is just a pretty amazing dance.
Amazing, too, when you think of the state Supreme Court said voter ID is okay if you use our saving construction, which, if you're a cynic, you might say, well, that looks like judicial activism, doesn't it? Ordering state government to create a new process to get an ID to make your law constitutional. But, you know, that's another story in itself. The U.S. Supreme Court steps in days before my birthday on a Thursday night and says, hold off, because the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, months before the election, said it's all on, the rules have changed. I mean, it was kind of whiplash, if you will, for voters about what's on and what's off in
and
the
local
waiting days
elections
election.
clerks, how they keep track of it. But the same U.S. Supreme Court that stopped our photo ID law allowed Texas. It's just...
A lot of it, I think, is due to timing. The timing of the 7th Circuit decision coming out in September saying everything is on, got to show an ID. Was there enough time to educate voters that this was back on after been off for 2 years, whatever it was? I think that was a big part of the Supreme Court's problem. Now, once the court gets it, the full case, and we are assuming that the opponents of voter ID will file something, I think, by like early January to have it heard.
Okay.
It looks like, you know, you would say from precedent, they're going to uphold the law. J.B. Van Hollen expressed confidence in an interview last week. I expect that issue done. It's not unresolved for leave office because, in the end, the Supreme Court's going to hold it up.
On that note, let's actually listen to what J.B. Van Hollen said, predicting that we will have to show, all voters will have to show a photo ID in 2016.
The only thing that could be looked at as a defeat that we've been dealt is when the Supreme Court basically said during the last election we couldn't have it implemented because we were trying to do so too late. It was not in any way a ruling on the merits. I don't see any way that we're going to lose on the merits now, if there's even another decision to be made.
Top story number 3. Governor Walker takes steps to run for president. Now, the last Wisconsin official, Tommy Thompson, ran for president, never got out of Iowa. But the governor, as we'll hear in a moment, in his victory speech on November 4th, talked about Washington
A lot.
a lot. So, what's your take? He's in, but next steps?
He is all but in. He's been all but in for a while. I mean, we've all assumed since he won the recall, and if Mitt Romney didn't win that fall, that Governor Walker would be a player nationally in 2016, because he has created, thanks to Democrats actually, kind of ironically, a national fundraising network. They tried to recall him. He became a hero for conservatives. If you look at his fundraising reports, they have money coming in from all over the place. I mean, I've looked at lots of reports in my years up here. Never have I seen that much outside money from out of Wisconsin, I should say, coming in to one candidate. It's unique for a Wisconsin official. It's a great platform. Now, it's a platform he has to enlarge, if you will, and have much bigger donors to super PACs to play in the new world we live in. But it gives him a great foundation. He's right next door to Iowa. And you can all down the list of like what would be a strength of Scott Walker running for president. The weaknesses, though, are things like these John Doe documents. I mean, the ads write themselves. Part of a criminal scheme. You know, it's easy hit to do. Governor Walker has benefited from timing, amazing timing in his career. 2002 with the Milwaukee County race, where it was a great environment for him to run. Yeah. Democrats ran bad candidates against him in 06 or 08. All right. Then look at 06, he dropped out knowing he couldn't win the general election. It was a wave year. If he'd stuck in, beat Mark Green, could have got wiped out and had his career undercut then. 2010, a great Republican. I mean, you go on the line. I know. He's a great political person.
And he's also written the book, you know, Unintimidated. But 3 days after he was reelected, he goes to Florida and he tells an Associated Press reporter, your old employer, he must be on the list of serious candidates.
Oh yeah, he's feeling his oats a little bit right now. He's basking the glow, and deservedly so. I mean, give him credit. He's won 3 elections in 4 years in Wisconsin, each by a decent margin. Now, the question is, he won that with 2.5 million people turning out in Wisconsin, which is good for Republicans. But there's another 500,000 voters out there who are going to come out in a November 2016 election.
Presidential.
That makes, he would even have a tough time winning Wisconsin. I'm not saying he couldn't or that he would lose for sure, but that's a much more Democratic state than when he's won in before. It could be a tough race for him to win Wisconsin by itself. I mean, so you see all these possible pitfalls for him going forward.
Okay, and let's listen to what Scott Walker said on November 4th after he'd been reelected. The number of times he says Washington could learn from Wisconsin.
The folks in Washington like this top-down approach that's old and artificial and outdated that says the government knows best. We believe that you should build the economy from the ground up. That's new and fresh and organic, and that's what we're going to do. In fact, those groups in Washington, they tend to measure success in government by how many people are dependent on the government, by how many people are on unemployment, by how many people are on food stamps, by how many people are on Medicaid. That dream we talked about, it's not just Republican or Democrat. It's not just liberal or conservative. It is the American dream that talks about the dignity of work. And in America, we take a day off to celebrate the 4th of July and not the 15th of April, because in America, we celebrate our independence from the government, not our dependence on it.
The second most important political story in Wisconsin. Same-sex marriage legalized in Wisconsin. Now, JR, I voted for this for number 1, but I was outvoted by my fellow Capitol correspondents and WisconsinEye. And here's why. Our voters added to the Constitution a prohibition against same-sex marriage. So that was part of it, but I think a bigger part of it is here you have federal judges, Judge Crabb, then the Court of Appeals, then the U.S. Supreme Court letting stand Judge Crabb's order that our constitutional ban violates due process. So one reason I voted this for number 1 is the process. No state elected official, no voter was consulted. U.S. judges. Your feeling?
In my adult lifetime, I have never seen an issue where the numbers switch so quickly, other than maybe George Bush the first poll numbers post Gulf War I versus a year later running for re-election as president. Okay. I mean, almost 60% of voters in Wisconsin approved the amendment in 2004 or 2006. I'm sorry.
2006.
And now it's 50+% support, not just civil unions, but full gay marriage. I didn't see mass protests about the federal court decisions. Yes, there are some conservative groups who are not happy about this, but Scott Walker said life goes on, let's get past this. I mean, there was no big outrage in the Capitol, no lawmakers,
Republican leaders ran from this issue after this.
Well, nothing to do with it, because they see the changing dynamics in the electorate that they don't see it the same way that it was seen 10 years ago. It's amazing the transformation of this issue in such a short period of time.
Well, it was my choice for number one. And let's now hear videos from the same-sex couples who are overjoyed by the federal judge's ruling.
I want to thank the ACLU from the bottom of our hearts because without them representing us in this case, we could not have won the right to marry in Wisconsin.
And that sound that you hear in the background is a little bit of a nudge pushing those last dominoes over, because I do feel like we're at a point in time when there's nothing but forward movement and there's no reason to be anything but hopeful.
This allows us to be who we always thought we were. The ladies who live down the street and who go to the PTO meetings and attend sports events and do all of those things. So that's who we are, and now we get to be married too. It's just wonderful.
The top political story in Wisconsin in 2000 and give it. Top political story, what I'm calling the Walker wave elections. As you said, wins the third governor's election in 4 years, first governor to survive a recall in American history. Assembly Republicans pick up seats. They'll now be 63-36 on January 5 when the next session convenes. Senate Republicans hold 19-14. But here's why I had this as number two. Incumbent governors are supposed to win re-election. But I think you voted at number one.
We heard all summer long, right? Well, the wave's not going to hit here because it's all about Walker. It's going to be a much different electorate. Democrats have a chance to pick up some of these seats. Come on, the morning after, it's like, wow, the wave hit hard. Look at where people lost. I mean, Democrats lost a seat, like an open seat like Howard Markline's, which should have been theirs by all rights. I mean, that was a Democratic leading seat. Yeah. They had a candidate who was caught in public drunk, months before the election. What's going on? They lose that seat. Oh, by the way, Americans for Federation for Children ran a bunch of ads in that race, knocking on the Democratic candidate.
Scott Jensen says they went 6 for 6. And
look up in Wausau. Mandy Wright should not have lost that seat in a normal year. She was the barometer when I talk to people of if she loses, it's a bad night for Democrats. She lost. We went through and looked at the assembly districts, the governor vote by assembly district. Mary Burke didn't do well. A lot of seats where she should have done well. Well, they need her to do well to help down the ballot. It's an amazing thing that wave did hit here, and it hit hard. Not only was it good for Governor Walker, Assembly Republicans now have the most seats they've had since 1957-ish. Yeah. Right? But they've got a big governing majority, but that is also a difficult situation to have at times.
Okay, but you can't call him landslide Walker, can you? Because he continually gets 52, closing in on 53, right? All three of his elections for governor, it's enough to win, but it's not some Tommy Thompson margins.
The thing is, though, the Tommy Thompson days are gone.
They are.
Barack Obama won Wisconsin going away in 12, and it was by 6 or 7 points. Now, in 8, it was a huge win, biggest since Lyndon Johnson in 64. But we don't see those wave elections in Wisconsin. You don't see that big top of the ticket. Even in the Democratic wave of 06, Doyle won with 52%. I mean, there is a very divided state.
Yes, very polarized.
Your kind of cap is, if you can get past 53, you're doing pretty good in Wisconsin anymore. Yeah. So it's a different state. It's changed dramatically. We're the ticket splitters. We don't have those folks anymore. I mean, if Republicans win that state top of the ticket, they're going to win down ballot. Same for Democrats.
Incumbent should win.
Absolutely.
That's why it's my number 2. Anyway, let's listen to 2 audio clips, final clips. Governor Walker on the night he was reelected, talking about that, and Speaker Voss on running the table in terms of not losing any of their incumbents.
Now, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and I want to thank the folks at home for joining in with us. And to all of you who voted for me, thank you. And for those who didn't, I hope to earn your support at least and your respect over the next 4 years. It's interesting, the challenges we faced. You see, there was a group out of Washington-based special interest who thought they could spend a lot of money and a lot of time in the state and somehow convince the people of the state to be against something. I got to tell you, I'm an optimist. I believed all along if we got a positive message out that in the end, people of the state wanted to be for something, not against something. And look what happened tonight.
Yeah, I mean, actually a great record. So not only did we keep all of our incumbents running for re-election, all of them won. We kept every single Republican seat that was being vacated. That's awesome. And then on top of it, we added 3 more members who took out an incumbent Democrat. A great record, one that I'm really proud of, but it just means that we have lots of great people who are going to be in the room helping to make the ideas work. I have promised that every single session that I am speaker, we are going to cut people's taxes. Income taxes are one of my highest priorities, property taxes as well. Does that mean it would just be on the personal property tax? It's definitely a possibility.
Jerry, it's been a pretty busy, pretty amazing political year, in summary, right?
Yes, they all are.
They all are.
I haven't had a dull one yet.
Which leads, let's wrap it up this way. A prediction for 2015, my friend.
Right to work will pass, but it'll be bumpy along the way.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
So you start looking at the dynamic of the Senate, right? Scott Fitzgerald lit that fuse a few weeks ago saying that we're going to deal with it now. Time is now. Last week he said, well, what I meant was we're going to talk about it. We're doing, the bill is not fast-tracked. I'm not saying it's going to be on the floor in early January, but that train has left the station. There is momentum behind that issue. They're going to have to deal with it. The big question in the Senate is they lose one January 3rd, I think it is, when Grothman resigns to go out to Congress. They can only lose one vote then and still pass the bill until they replace that person. So can they keep it together? Fitzgerald's talked about carve-outs. Will they do that? That might have a constitutional problem. There are probably 4 or 5 members in his caucus that I would describe as squishy, if you will, on right to work. Do they band together and stop the bill, or do they grow a backbone and say, no, we don't like this? Or are they going to go along and get along because the majority of the caucus wants it? I mean, it's clear if you took those 19, soon to be 18 members and polled them, you get a majority vote for right to work. But is that enough to get those to go along? In the Assembly, Voss is saying you got to make the argument for it, lay out the case. I think they've learned the lesson from Act 10 of if you ran something like this through quickly, that's what causes the protests and people kind of coming out and beating on your door saying what's going on. They have to make a case for this. So it might take some time to do that, but in the end, I don't see how they stop it, and there's no way Governor Walker vetoes it. I mean, he doesn't want this issue because it takes away from running for president. Let's be honest. He knows he's going to suck up the oxygen for 2 months, a month, whatever it is. When they're talking about his budget and, again, reform of government, improving schools, we're talking about right to work. And there might be some protests, there might be some issues, but it takes him off message. But he can't veto it. He can't go to Iowa after this and go, yeah, I broke the public employee unions, but I said, you know what, that right to work thing, well, it's too much for me. You know, and he gets some extra credit for it, by the way, because he's already checked that box of like being anti-union. So it doesn't help him either way, but eventually it gets done.
Okay, my prediction is that the people with titles in the Capitol swallow hard and come up with the biggest transportation funding package that we've seen in a long time. I just think, and they're going to get D votes for it along the corridor, Madison to Illinois. I just think it won't be everything in Gottlieb's package, but I think it'll be the biggest transportation package cobbled together that you and I have seen in a long time.
Be a separate budget or a separate transportation budget or with the budget?
Oh boy, you're tough. I think they're going to roll it into the main budget, but it's just going to be a fascinating year, isn't it?
Yes.
So thank you so much for this year-end version of Rewind. JR and I are looking to continue this in 2015, and thank you. Hey, Drummer Henry, take us out. I'm Steve Walders.
And I'm JR Ross.
Rewind for 2014.